Will Saudi be able to resist Trump's nuclear bait? Last week's reported signing of a civilian nuclear cooperation deal between Saudi Arabia and the United States was framed by Riyadh as historic. That framing did not survive the week. Following the agreement, reportedly signed Wednesday, July 22nd, President Donald Trump declared the deal totally subject to the kingdom normalizing relations with Israel under the Abraham Accords. This condition appears nowhere in the leaked text of the agreement. The White House has since confirmed that Trump's statement reflects actual policy. Saudi Arabia has said nothing. Whether this is a genuine precondition or simply another of Trump's improvisations, the question is whether Saudi Arabia is now expected to join the very accord it has spent years declining to join, in exchange for a nuclear program it has wanted for over a decade. The accord Saudi Arabia keeps not joining. The Abraham Accords were assembled during Trump's first term and marketed as a diplomatic triumph, normalizing relations between Israel and the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan, with Kazakhstan later added despite having no obvious stake in the region. Saudi Arabia has never joined, and speculation about whether it will has become a recurring feature of political commentary. It would be naive to describe Saudi-Israeli relations as non-existent. Unofficial contact has developed steadily since the mid-2000s, with practical cooperation on airspace and limited economic ties accelerating between 2018 and 2022. Reports of quiet diplomatic meetings between the two states, drawn together chiefly by shared hostility to Iran, have circulated for years. What has never followed is formal recognition. The reason Riyadh has avoided that step is not mysterious. Saudi Arabia hosts Islam's two holiest sites and markets itself as the land of Tawheed. That marketing does double work, projecting a claim to Islamic leadership abroad while anchoring the regime's popularity at home. Thus, the kingdom's open courting of the Zionist occupation risks the legitimacy it provides. By most accounts, Saudi Arabia had drifted close to some accommodation with Israel before October 2023, in a period when the Palestinian cause had faded from international attention and quiet normalization carried little cost. Then October 7th happened. States that had already normalized found themselves defending the decision, especially when even non-Muslim governments suspended their own ties in protest. Since then, as the framework of rebuilding Gaza lingers, Trump's transactional instincts appear to have settled on the nuclear file as the incentive most likely to move Riyadh, particularly after Iranian missiles struck Saudi territory during the recent war. The deal on the table. Saudi Arabia has pursued a civilian nuclear program for years as part of its effort to diversify away from oil dependence, a goal embedded in Vision 2030. The agreement now on offer has been pitched by the Trump administration as a decades-long, multi-billion-dollar partnership, one that would anchor American firms at the center of Saudi nuclear infrastructure while locking out Chinese and Russian competitors from a strategically significant market. The United States currently holds bilateral nuclear agreements with the EU and 25 nations. However, unlike Washington's usual deals, such as the one negotiated with the UAE, this deal reportedly excludes the International Atomic Energy Agency's additional protocol, the mechanism that allows for enhanced monitoring and verification. A wall around the Crown Prince. Saudi officials have consistently insisted on a credible and irreversible pathway to Palestinian statehood, generally understood as a state along the 1967 lines with East Jerusalem as its capital. Whatever one makes of the sincerity behind that position, its political function is unmistakable. It is a wall that protects the Crown Prince from his own population and from the accusation that he sold out the Palestinian cause. That calculation is unlikely to change quickly. Nuclear cooperation is valuable, but Saudi Arabia is not so energy desperate that it must accept the first offer on the table, and it has other avenues for security guarantees. What could still move the needle is a formula, however cosmetic, that Saudi leadership can present domestically as meaningful progress on Palestine, combined with the shared antagonism toward Iran that has narrowed gaps between Riyadh and Tel Aviv before. Leverage runs in both directions. Israel never appears to have taken Saudi Arabia's Palestinian statehood conditions seriously, betting instead that American pressure and incentives would eventually be enough. That bet has not paid off, and Washington now seems to have simply handed over the nuclear package regardless, or at least dangled it as bait. But Saudi Arabia is not a supplicant in this arrangement, and it does not need to behave like one. Riyadh has real alternatives among Chinese, Russian, South Korean, and French nuclear suppliers, and it has every incentive to use that fact as leverage of its own inside Washington, lobbying to decouple the reactors from the politics. The more uncomfortable possibility, however, is the reverse. A White House willing to make nuclear cooperation contingent on normalization is a White House willing to use the same leverage more crudely. If flattery and promises fail to move Riyadh, the temptation for Trump to apply harder pressure to extract that yes will not disappear. But ambition also cuts both ways, and a kingdom this central to American strategic interests is not without means to resist being cornered into a decision it knows its own people would never forgive. But will Mohammed bin Salman be able to do that?